Man, today I'm joined by somebody, an OG of Locked On Mavs from the ticket, Jake Kemp. We're going to talk Mavs, Jalen Brunson, basically the state of the Mavs right now, coming up here in a little bit.
Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good! And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Welcome to Locked On Mavs. This is one of your co-hosts, Isaac Harris, Mavs.com. Nick is traveling, I want to say the world, but he's basically in Ohio. And nothing exciting in Ohio. Just kidding. But today, joined by Jake Kemp, one of the OG. Okay. Let's just first off, Jake's from the ticket. He's been talking Mavs forever. You talk Mavs basically every day, right?
It's probably like every day, half of the year, and then during Cowboys, it's probably like 3 days a week. But certainly with Luka, even where the Cowboys are, we're still doing Mavs pretty much every day, I would say.
Yeah. So hangs on the ticket, 1310, right?
Yeah, I think the cool kids now are more onto FM. Isaac,
Okay.
So that's 96.7.
Whoa.
We also have the Sports Day Talk app, which is pretty cool. You can pause and rewind. It's almost like a podcast. It's like people actually say this to me sometimes, like when they ask me what I do, like people who are 20s. I'm like, yeah, I have like a radio show, and they're like, is that like a podcast?
Yes.
And I'm like, yeah, kind of, but like from just a few years ago, and then the 100 before that.
No, yeah, a guy I work with named Tanner. He is in college and he listens to the radio every day. And I was like, man, mad props to you. Listen to the radio, because when I listen to y'all segments, I just I'll go find the segment on a podcast feed. And I'm like, all right, I'll listen to it this way. But
it all counts.
Yeah, it all counts. And so I joked at the beginning that he's an OG Locked On Mavs guy, because back in the day, episode one of Locked On Mavs, your host or Jake Kemp and Mike Marshall. So I went back and I was like, you know what? I'm going to pull up a clip. I'm going to pull up something from the very first episode. And now I did this very quickly before we got on here, so don't mind what it looks like on the YouTube channel here. Just listen to the audio, because the title of it, September 12th, 2016, the title of it is Kevin Durant Saves the Mavs Offseason. So throwback to Harrison Barnes become a Maverick. But in the first 20 minutes, y'all have a mini little segment here talking about a dodgeball game.
Did you see Twitter today from the Mavericks that they're having the dodgeball game?
No.
Let's see. Gosh, man.
Let's see what Steve Alika's been up to.
They're having a Darren Williams put together, I guess, a charity dodgeball game, and it's like the Mavs Maniacs versus the actual Mavericks.
I'm
except for except for the actual Mavericks are dressed up as grannies.
Wow, and, a little Larry Johnson vibe.
There is a phenomenal photo of Rick Carlisle dressed as your grandma from Watauga or something.
Wow.
He's got a wig and he's got a nightie on, and it is exceptional. And it might change into my my Twitter avatar at some time.
Look at the other thing that Rick is doing right here in this photo I'm looking at is a classic move where you cross your arms and kind of thumb your biceps up a little bit.
Ooh, that is.
Just make them pop a little bit.
That's the most junior high move that's ever happened.
Wow.
Now, that didn't make the Tim McMahon story. But
that's awesome. Yeah, it's funny, man. Like, we loved doing it, but we were nowhere near as committed as you guys were. Like, we were probably 3 or 4, a week, and it was like I can't really do much more than that. We had way more just weird tangents about the team and stuff. Like I don't think we were really cut out for it. But I told you this whenever we were getting started. Like, I don't think you knew this. I know Nick does. Like, I listen almost every day.
That's so cool.
And so does the guy I do the show with, Dan McDowell. He listens, especially like for day after games and stuff like that. Like, we listen almost every day. So you were like laying out the format for me, and I'm like, bro, I got it.
You're like, I got this.
I can help with the reads if you want.
Spot is brought to you by Bill.
Hey.
Well, I really appreciate it. Appreciate the support, man. And talking about people who love to talk Mavs, watching Mavs. I mean, we were talking before this, and you're like, yeah, man, I used to sit in this one chair, this one spot there at Mavs games for 5 straight years there, every single home game. And so, I mean, you follow the team. You've been following the team for so long now. You know everything about the team. I just want to. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to throw 5 different questions for you, 5 big questions about the Mavs,
Okay.
and just kind of get state of the Mavs for Jake Kemp, what you're seeing, what you're maybe hearing, what you think about the team. And I'm just going to throw a big one right off the top. You probably have these conversations, whether it's, with family Christmas, or you run into people and they know you watch the Mavs and stuff, and they ask you just the big blanket statement of, man, how's the Mavs doing this year? And he's like, oh, I love these questions, because you can go any direction. So somebody just asks you, or let's just say like a middle schooler walks up to you and said, Jake, how's the Mavs doing this year? Like, how would you describe the season so far?
What I would do is, rather than say I don't know, I would say, well, here's the thing, 5th grader, they don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's how I feel about the team right now, is that we knew that there was going to be a clarity search, for at least like the first 40 games, maybe even a full regular season, which is a bummer because I don't know that they're really in a fact-finding portion of their win curve or of their like franchise trajectory. But I think that they knew they weren't going to know a ton about who they were until at least mid-season anyways. And now, because of a number of different circumstances, they know even less. COVID obviously being one of them, injuries being one of them. And I mean, obviously that's like the 2 big ones, but I think the biggest thing for me is not so much that I don't know what they are. It's that I don't feel like they have any idea what they are yet. And, that goes from, how they want to play defensively night in, night out. Like, there's definitely been some bright spots for sure. The data has trended upward at times. Then there've been some downturns. The Luka conditioning thing. Last year I had a number of excuses for that because I felt like, especially like in sports talk radio world, like people didn't really give the full picture, which was like in Slovenia, gyms were still closed down. Like, I'm not saying the guy can't get a Peloton or something, but like if you're trying to get full court work, even in pickup, like they were closed down. The season did start earlier than we thought it would. Somewhere between like 3 and 5, maybe even 6 weeks. This time it's just weird because I didn't know that it was possible for someone that in shape to lose it that quickly to that degree. Like, I'm almost impressed. Like, because I thought, okay, well, we're all staying up till 2 a.m. watching the Olympics. And I just thought, well, even if he just chills out, like, he's going to be in the best shape starting a season in the NBA that he's ever been. And obviously that didn't happen. I would say the weird one constant of this season that I think I do know, and I think they know, was the thing we were the most concerned and confused about, which is KP healthy and will he be able to be a force when healthy?
Yeah.
And he pretty much has been, like, on both ends of the floor. Like, it's almost like first year Mavs KP on defense last year and maybe a little bit of the year before Mavs KP on offense. They've been able to figure out his role. So the weirdest part is the thing that I think we were all the most intrigued and concerned and confused by is kind of the thing they know the most about right now.
Yeah, and when I think about the whole clarity part of who they think they are, we heard the whole Christmas thing. Oh, well, we'll know who we are by Christmas. And I'm like, but do we? Like, now we're passing. I get the past few weeks of that, and I still don't know where we're at with that. And you went into one of my other questions of Luka Doncic, fill in the blank. The Luka Doncic in shape stuff is blank, and we've talked about it. We've danced around it. We've, on this pod, but as soon as you say anything negative, somewhat negative about Luka, Luka, fans will come out of the, everywhere like, oh no, it's not about Luka being in shape, but you have to be realistic about it. He hasn't been in shape. Now we'll see what happens when he comes back after this, this time off and stuff. But it was, it's wild. You think back to those Olympic times, and it's like, how does somebody, going from the Olympic to start of the season, you're like, I remember those preseason games. I remember shooting a few texts to a few people and be like, does does he look a little bit more like I've kind of defended him in the years past. I've made fun of like that narrative, but I think he is a little bit, heavier than what he normally is. So you said, I mean, if you had to fill in the blank, the Luka Doncic in shape stuff is blank. What would you say?
I mean, it's minorly disappointing. In retrospect, like the hookah and shots photos are not near as funny now.
Yeah.
Like I love that at the time. I'm like, oh, look at him cutting loose. The guy's always having to work. He had to qualify. He's going to Olympics. He had playoffs, carrying the team against LA. And then now I'm like, man, I don't know. Maybe if you would have just been like, I don't know, just run like a few miles a day rather than the hookah. But the weird thing about it is before I did the show I do now, I was the producer for the previous Noon to 3 show. And I would say this to all Mavs fans, and if they may not be posted right now because we had some server stuff, but if not, I promise you I will figure it out. That show had Dirk on every single year from 1999, or I can't remember if it was 99 or 2000, through the year he retired. And they had him on in person every time. And by about year 4 or 5, it was an hour every time. And he was super relaxed. And you can hear Sarah Melton laughing the entire time in the background. And it was just an honor and a pleasure, dude, because he would come up to the studio. Dude, I couldn't get, like, no disrespect, but like the list of Mavs that I was not able to get to walk up the stairs because we're in their building, that I could not get to walk up the stairs after practice and sit down for 20 minutes. It would stun you, but Dirk would do it for an hour every single year. He would take pictures with interns and accounting people and front desk people. And we're not the flagship, like there's absolutely no reason for him to do that, but he would do it every single year. He was super, super cool about it. And if you ever get bored and want to go back and listen to those, I think they're like the most insightful Dirk interviews you'll ever hear. And I remember him initially, I think this came up with Chandler Parsons, maybe. But I remember him saying that he didn't really start taking his body seriously until he was like in his late 20s, early 30s. Because like now we know Dirk is a guy who is very meticulous about his diet, and especially towards the end of his career was like hardcore about it. And it was like no wine during the year, but like early mid 20s, Dirk was definitely fried chicken on the plane guy all the time. And so the first part of it is that I don't think it's that weird that a guy like Luka at his age doesn't take this quite as serious as maybe you would hope someone with his ability does. The second thing, though, is that the league and times have changed since Dirk was doing that. Like, I think there's a lot fewer guys now in their first few years that are living like even NBA players from like the mid 2000s did in their first few years. Like, the sports science and nutrition game has just changed, And so I'm trying to balance those two things of saying, like, I know a lot of dudes who have made great careers in the NBA did not take their body and their health and nutrition seriously 11 and a half months out of the year like you would expect them to, and they went on to have great careers. I also don't know that you can play that game anymore. You know what I mean? So I would say it's mildly disappointing. And I don't know, man. I mean, I think the ankle was a problem, and maybe that can get rehabbed through time off, but I think we see it in sports and in life time and time again for the last year and a half. If you were having trouble with your win before COVID, that's not going to magically fix itself in any short order at all. Like, you're probably not going to be the same as when you left.
Yeah.
So how long does it take going forward? And that applies to all these guys, which sucks. Now, the other factor is that it's happening to guys on every team, right?
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. Guys, this pod is brought to you by True Bill. Do you know why free trials renew without your consent? It's a business scam out to get you. Don't let greedy corporations pocket your money. Download Truebill to take control of your subscriptions. I don't know about you, but if you're wanting to save money, I'm kind of in that camp. I'll raise my hand. I need to save some money right now. So Truebill is the way to go. Truebill is a new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, want, or simply forgot about. On average, people save $720 a year with Truebill. Because companies make subscriptions hard to cancel, Truebill makes it incredibly simple. Just link your accounts that Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in one tap. Don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at truebill.com/lockedonnba. Go right now. Truebill.com/lockedonnba. It could save you thousands a year. Truebill.com/lockedonnba. Okay, Jake, when it comes to what you've learned from this team or players on the roster, this is another fill in the blank for you. The player you have changed your mind on the most this season is blank. Or you could change it to the player you've learned about the most.
I mean, I guess if you frame it that way, it's got to be Brunson for me. I was almost going to say Bullock, but that's so within the margins of just that he's a guy that if you look at all the peripheral stats, you would think, and I know like the month by month splits, but right now he just kind of seems to be a copy paste of some of the guys we've expected to be able to increase or at least maintain their shooting when they got here, and they haven't. So I think you got to go with Brunson, mainly just because of end of game stuff. You know, that's something that I think we all maybe thought he was capable of. And obviously he had played massive moments at the collegiate level and played a ton of basketball in college. But until you see a guy do it, and you see a guy do it against top flight NBA competition and defense, you're just projecting, you know? So to me, I think it's got to be him. And the reason you can't say KP is because he has done it before. Now, I was not so sure that this KP lived here anymore. So the fact that you see that it does, that's pretty interesting. I mean, I may feel as any positivity I have for the Mavericks this year is being buoyed primarily by Porzingis and his fluidity, how dynamic he looks. Even when the three's not falling, like that actually doesn't concern me that much.
Yeah.
You know, because it's the other stuff that he's getting that's I don't want to say surprising, but we just didn't know. But the true answer has to be Brunson. Like, I mean, I think Brunson can start for a dozen teams right now easily.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we had this conversation the other day, and I was kind of surprised. You know, anytime you have a conversation of like, hey, what's this future of this guy on the team, you know, going to, you know, a new contract, you know, you get fans on both sides. I'm like, oh, we're either going to get slaughtered by this from, you know, fan reaction, or fans are going to, and it was like the whole split in the middle. And you're like, all right, cool. Well, then we hit that right. Then if you have fans on both sides that are either happy about, you know, his whole role moving forward, or they're upset with what you know, talking about with it. With Brunson, like what happens with him? We laid out the whole thing of, is he playing too well right now for the Mavericks to where he's
clickbait? Clickbait. When I saw that pop up in my podcast feed, I was like, these sons of bees. I'm like, don't. I mean, I knew what you were saying, but still, I'm like, oh man.
But like, do you think he's playing so good now to where if Dallas doesn't view him as a starter next to Luka long term, and I don't know if they do or not, but if they don't, do you think he's playing so well that he's kind of like pricing himself out of Dallas?
Man, it's such an interesting question as far as, you know, where the franchise is headed. And you know, they haven't really been, I'd have to look, but I don't think they've really been up against the tax like since the lockout, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
it's been
sure
a
that,
while.
yeah, I'm sure that, you know, the Parsons deal and the Harrison Barnes deal got him up there. But I mean, I'll address it this way first. I don't think from a PR standpoint, I don't think that Cuban and the front office can afford to lose Brunson just over money. Because the thing is that they're not going to be, it's very similar to where they were in 2010, where it's obviously not the championship, but you're not going to be able to replace him with $1 to $1 value.
Yeah.
Like you're going to have Luka's contract kick in. Timmy's signed. KP's got another couple years and an opt out. So if you lose Brunson, you can't just say, oh, okay, well, Brunson wants 23 a year. We don't want to pay him that, but we want to take that 23 and take it elsewhere. At least not this offseason, you can't. So it really is just a matter of, are they willing to outbid another team as the highest bidder? And yeah, that's probably going to bump them up into the tax. And that's not a great place to be for a team that's not a true contender. But I just don't think they can afford. I don't think they can afford from a public standpoint. And I also don't think they can afford it from a Luka standpoint.
Yeah.
Like, I think they have to be considering, and I think Timmy might have been part of that, rightly or wrongly. I think they have to be making every roster decision thinking, you know, we kind of got to signal to this guy that we're serious here.
Yeah.
And so I don't like, for example, what do you think he's going to get?
I think it's around 18 to 20.
Okay.
You just have to find it. We all know it takes one team. It takes one team out there, a New York or whoever it is, a team that opens up. Let's say Minnesota trades, D'Angelo Russell or something, and whatever. And it takes one team that sits and says, "Hey, we'll pay you 19 a year over the next 4 years." And it's like, holy crap. And if you're Dallas, you're saying, what matters the most to JB? Is it money? Is it a role? If they're like, hey, we'll pay you 18, but you might be like Tim Hardaway in a few months, you might be coming off the bench. Or if he's like, no, I'm ready to be a full-time starting point guard somewhere, whether it's in New York or if Boston makes some roster moves and like, hey, come be our starting point guard next to Jason Tatum.
So then the question becomes, for public saving face, how much would the front office percentage-wise be willing to go above the offer that he gets to start to make him a sixth man? And if you're talking about, oh, they want to give me 20, I would just give him 22, because again, you're already going to be capped out. Like, there are guys who are good bench players, obviously a very different type of player, but like Kevin Huerter just got 4 for like, I want to say 65. I was just looking at this. Okay, 4 for 65, so that's about 16 a year. Like, what do you think Hero's going to get?
Oh yeah, I think he'll get at least 20 probably.
So a different type of player in that they're both like pure shooters, and that's a skill you can't find. But I also think a guy who can run your offense, who also has a pretty nice shot himself, I could see him being in between those two numbers, and I just don't think they can afford to lose him.
No.
They won't be able to replace him, and that's part of the problem with missing in the draft.
Oh, the draft is a whole different podcast.
But it compounds upon your free agency's decisions where, okay, like let's say this, for example, in the alternate universe where they took Desmond Bane, are they as sold that they have to give Hardaway that deal?
Yeah, that's good.
Now, it's early in Bane's career. You would have only had a year to look at.
Does Rick play him?
That's true too. Like, this alternate universe has a bunch of different things that need to change, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying, when you hit on guys like that, you don't have to be so hard pressed to say this guy has us hostage, because basically every Maverick free agent has them hostage right now.
Yeah. 100%. Okay, we're going to take one more quick break, and then we'll come back, and I want to continue the Brunson conversation, but go into the trade deadline stuff. And guys, this pod is also brought to you by Bet Online, our friends. Bet Online AG, that's the place you want to be. And Bet Online has you covered this season for more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the college bowls this weekend. Big time weekend for the college bowls. If you're a fan of college football, if you want to bet on the NBA right now through all the hardship deals and all, Bet Online. Head to Bet Online for the place to be with that. Bet Online remains your number one spot for all sports action this season. Head to the website to use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code Locked On to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, boxing, UFC, you name it, they have odds for it. Bet Online is the fastest, easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. So you don't want to take advantage, then don't download Bet Online. But if you do want to take advantage, you need to download Bet Online AG. Bet Online, where the game starts. This pod is also brought to you by, our good friends. There's not an advertiser. There's not a relationship out there that we have that is stronger than Built Bar. It's the new year, so that means it's almost the new year. So that means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit, eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. I have literally a Built Bar basket in my pantry right now with Built Bar stacked in there. Ones that I've bought, ones that Built Bar has sent us. Whenever they have a new flavor, they'll send it to us so we can talk about it. Built Bar, we're super big believers. You guys know this if you've been listening to this pod, but it's a protein bar. It tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than a candy bar. Honestly, some of them do taste better than some candy bars. Built Bar makes it easier to stick to your resolution because it tastes so good you'll want to eat it. It's covered in 100% real chocolate, 130 calories, 40 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein. I could go all day on these numbers because it sounds so good. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories. You do the math on that. looking at about 110 calorie difference. 30 grams of sugar and dozens of net carbs. Man, this is 30 grams of sugar for a normal candy bar, 4 grams of sugar for a Built bar. Here's an idea for the new year. Go to all your secret treat stashes at home, in the pantry, in the office, in the car, wherever. Throw it all out. Throw out the sugary, calorie-filled treats. Replace them with Built bars. So when you're craving a snack or treat, you can reach something that's healthy. So go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDON. Get 15% off your order. Use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Okay, so if they're setting back saying right now, well, we don't know if we're going to be able to go up to 20-something million. Let's say Mark's saying, if he's going to get 20 million, then I don't know if we can do that, especially if he's going to come off the bench. And we still have Tim making 18. And are we going to, combine 38 million and 2 players coming off the bench possibly? If I said Kristaps Porzingis, Jalen Brunson, Tim Hardaway Jr., which one of those 3 are not on the Mavs after the trade deadline? And you can say all of them are still in the Mavs, but if you had to pick one.
Can Hardaway even be traded?
I think so.
He can?
Because
Okay.
he signed his new contract, and I think so.
The least likely has to be Brunson.
Yeah.
Like the most likely to be traded. His value is through the roof. I mean, I don't know that it would be. I mean, I think the more interesting question might be, obviously KP's money is double Hardaway Jr.'s, but I think the more interesting question might be relative to the player in their contract, whose value is lower between Porzingis and Hardaway.
I've had this conversation in the press box a few times, and it's wild how many people go back and forth on that of who would be harder to trade if you wanted to trade one of them, Tim or KP. And it's wild because you hear all the, especially national, media and stuff talk about Porzingis and his contract and stuff, but he's been playing, pretty well. So it's like, hey, I mean, it's not as bad as going into the season if you wanted to entertain that route. And it feels like, just based on, talking with you on this podcast, you're pretty high on KP right now.
Yeah. Now the thing about that is turns like that, right? All he's got to do is get whether it's contact or non-contact, and that's going to happen. You're just hoping at this point that it's 3 or 4 games as opposed to 15 to 20. And that's why the fact that he's a few years younger, right? There's an age difference of a couple years at least, right?
Yeah.
29 and 26 or 2.5 years. So normally that would be a massive tipping in the scales on the way of KP's value. But with injury, that feels like a pretty old 26,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm high on Porzingis just because I think the numbers and the film, and that's something I did want to talk to you about, maybe at the end of like the 5-question thing, just talking about this recent stretch here and what it means for Porzingis. But I think Hardaway Jr. is virtually untradeable right now. Like, he's got 3.5 years left on his deal. Even if he were playing like pretty well, that's still just. I mean, it's almost like he's worth more to the Mavericks, even if he's playing well, than he is to like almost any other team,
Yeah. Well, what hurts him so much is, if he's not hitting 4 or 5 threes in a game, there's not a lot outside of that he's bringing to the floor. He's not a huge playmaker. We've chronicled on here a lot of that he struggles defensively. I'm trying to say that lightly on the perimeter. That's the thing. And it's like, if he's going to be streaky, it's kind of difficult in that. And now, he's obviously coming off the bench and stuff, but what did you have to throw at me as far as, KP as of late? I have one more question, but it's kind of like a pivot to Jason Kidd and everything.
Well, I just think what's really interesting, and I'll try to be as quick about this as I can. I don't want to run you guys too late. The way that this has worked for the last 8 games, but specifically the last 4, and all the talk of like, why are the Mavs so much more fun to watch? And I've listened to you guys talk about it and read people write about it. It's just so interesting to me that this stretch of either 4 or 8 games is like every debate and conversation that people have been having about this team for like the last 2 years distilled into like a 2-week like timeline, like whether is Luka 2-ball dominant, how come the roster seems so uninspired and it's stagnant? Like, we could just get anybody. I've literally heard people say like, they could replace a lot of these guys with anybody. And like they'd at least be as good. And I'm like, yeah, but what sort of bizarre world in which would that would happen? And then it happened.
Yeah.
And it's like, and people, oh well, KP's so much better when Luka's not out there. What, why is that happening? And then it just all happened at once. And it's like, he's going for 25 plus. And I looked it up, and so last season they were 24th in the league in passes per game. And like, that's not a end all be all telling predictive stat. You'll see good teams at the top. You'll see bad teams at the top. Although I'm sure you know this, but the funniest one of all time is the Warriors, right? You know that number?
No.
The Warriors went from last in the NBA in passes per game to first the year between Mark Jackson and Steve Kerr. Last to first.
Woo.
1 year. Doesn't happen.
Wow.
So last season, the Mavericks were 24th in the NBA. From the start of the season to December 10th, which is the first game Luka was out, or the last game he played, I guess, they were 23rd. So 24th last year, 23rd this year. For the 4 games after that, so 12-12 to 12-19, they were first in the NBA, and by a massive margin.
Wow.
Massive margin. The next 4 games, so 12-21 to 12-27, that's where we're getting into like straight up protocol stuff, like not just no Luka. Those first 4 were just no Luka. The next 4 is 12-21 to 12-27. That's 4 games. They're 6th.
Okay.
If you combine those 2 stretches, that 8-game stretch, Luka out for all 8, some guys here, some guys not, they're 3rd. And again, heading into that stretch through the bulk of the season, they're 23rd. So when people talk about like, man, I feel like the ball's moving more, like it's not just moving more, it's from almost the bottom of the league to top 5.
Yeah.
And it's with guys who don't know the offense really.
Yeah.
And like that is, I think the big question is we're all trying to say like, what can we take from this time and apply to moving forward? And I don't really know, because I don't really think a team with Luka is ever going to be top 5 or top 10 in passes per game. And that doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
But to me, it's just really interesting to be like, what we're seeing now is not nothing.
Yeah.
Like, what do they think they have here that they can apply to the rest of their roster? Like, or the rest of their roster makeup going forward, I mean, I don't know. I feel like you got to find a way to keep Knight. I think you start there. And that means you probably find a way to move on from Burke. And I don't know how you do that. And I know Willie's guaranteed next year, but I think they owe it to themselves to learn something from this stretch.
They can't just close this door and say, fun little run. We had the guys in, all the guys are out. Luka's back. Now we're going to go back to what Mavericks basketball looked like before Luka went out. They can't do that. So I think what you said right there is so key. Is it's something like, I don't know what it is that they have to carry on. It's something I threw out on yesterday's podcast is, when it comes to Luka, I want to see Luka moving, because all these passes are happening and the ball is moving around so much, but these guys are passing and then they're moving, they're passing and moving. We've seen the different clips of, hey, if Luka's going to defer to, JB on a play and JB's running pick and roll with, KP or something, Luka's just kind of chilling over there. Luka passes off and now he's going to chill. Can Luka, and this is where the shape comes in play, can Luka pass it and move it? Can everybody on the floor just keep on moving, passing, cutting? It feels like, people are cutting so much right now. And so that's what are they going to learn roster wise? How many of these guys stick around? Is it Brandon Knight? Is it Knight and Chris? I love Theo Pinson. You obviously can't, probably keep 3 or 4 of these guys, but do they keep 2 of them? Do they keep at least 1? I think at least one of them lands that other 2-way spot that Amarui, is out from now. But do they make another, roster move on top of that and keep one of those guys?
But you know what? It almost goes back to this is like, to me, the main value of the kid hire, because I was not super high on it at the time, but I'm a fan, so I'm willing to give anything a chance. But that's almost like the main value of the kid hire to me is they have to be able to address things with Luka without being worried about pissing him off so much that he's like sour.
Yeah.
So like when we talk about, do they have to keep Brunson, because that would be a disaster for the chemistry of the team. Plus he's just a really good player. Like, how do they communicate to Luka that, look, dude, like, you're not the problem, but you are part of the problem. And like, that's not to say like he's still all world. And I think you could get into the playoffs and get to 6 games against any team with any roster if he's on your squad. But if you have higher aspirations, some of this stuff they got to break the mold a little bit. And like, let's put it to you this way, bud. If you can't shoot 38% from 3, you're going to have to move around the floor.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot be stationary and be a 32% 3-point shooter. Like, that's not going to work. Like, that's why it's funny when people are like, oh, it's the Harden model. I'm like, Harden's a much better outside shooter at this point of his career than Luka is. So that's part of the reason Harden can stand there.
Yeah.
And that's on Kidd to sort of communicate that, I guess, is my general point.
Yeah. And speaking of Kidd, this is my last question for you. Considering where everything has come from of the offseason and hiring Jason Kidd, the Jason Kidd experience has been blank. 33 games in, I think it's 33. Could be wrong. 34 maybe. But the Jason Kidd experience has been blank so far.
Not a disaster.
There you go.
And I'm going to say not a disaster because I'm trying to be fair to him with the fact that we all knew coming into the year that the roster was relatively stagnant. And I didn't really think it was fair to judge him in a way where you would just say, well, you better be able to pick up exactly where Rick left off with the exact same roster. Like, that's what we want. And we're hoping by the end of the year that they can get there. But I don't think that's totally fair. Then you have the COVID stuff. And I would say completely away from basketball stuff that, kind of gives you the icky feeling about Jason Kidd. A lot of it was just the Machiavellian, like, backstabby culture in the room stuff that I just don't think that plays in today's NBA. And I haven't heard a murmur. Now it's early, but still, they're going through a lot. And you don't hear anybody say that there's any sort of, Discord. By Discord, I mean like the old version, not where Cuban talks to fans now. Like the old Discord. I'm too old for the new Discord.
Yeah.
But he's occasionally like kind of indicated his, hey, I don't know what you want me to do, palms up sort of attitude in post-game press conferences. But for the most part, as hard as what they're going through is now and really has been all year, I've kind of enjoyed his disposition, frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, they need it.
And I've been giving him praise for for these past few weeks of, bringing in, losing 3 assistants and bringing in all these new guys and being in all of these games. Like, if they would have lost all these games by a wide margin, I would be like, well, all right, I kind of get it. Luka's out and everything. And I feel like these Mavericks have been going into these games and they're like coached and ready. And I feel like he has to get some credit for that. And it's like what you said, like, I haven't heard a single thing at all. Like if we want to add a 6th question to this, we could say, what's your thoughts on the, the Carlisle McMahon story? But we both know, we've both been in situations where we've heard plenty of Rick Carlisle stories, throughout the days and months and years. And it's like, once again, I know this is super early, but I haven't heard anything about Kidd so far.
No. And that's why it's weird, the whole package deal with Nico thing.
Yeah.
I do think that was true. And I do think there are parts to it, whether it was, like practically true or just legally, it's the case. They were coming together. There's some things about that I don't love, but there's also, I think they have each other's backs and like sounding board in a way that like you're not going to get from every GM and coach, like relationship. Now that might also be a problem if things get bad because it makes it tougher, for somebody to tell somebody like, hey, sorry, you're really close to getting fired here, or, you are fired. But I also think like having that approach of 2 guys maybe makes it a little easier for them to keep things kind of chill.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll be too chill. I very seriously doubt that anybody's going to pine for the days of the culture of Rick Carlisle anytime during this tenure. But, they're obviously going to have to coach their superstar. That's going to happen. And the jury's still out on that one.
All right, Jake. Thanks so much for your time. Guys,
Yeah, man.
you know, if you're a Mavs fan, you know you can listen to Jake. Follow him on Twitter. I have it on the screen there. Not Jack Kemp. How many people's called you Jack throughout life?
Well, actually quite a few. I don't know like how much of an old school NFL fan you are, but he was also a vice presidential candidate for Bob Dole.
Okay. So I didn't know that.
He's a Hall of Famer, actually, quarterback for the Bills, Jack Kemp. And he was well-known player. And like I would always say and they're like, either people would say like, oh, like Jack Kemp, or are you related to Jack Kemp? I'm like, it's not that uncommon of a name. Like I don't
Yeah.
So there you go. Enough times to where I thought it was a real clever Twitter handle 12 years ago.
Well, even clicking on your, I clicked on your Twitter, Abby, today. I was like, I was dying laughing because every time I see him, I just think of him, singing and, strapped onto the rocket there. And,
I'm a big Armageddon fan as well, Isaac.
All right. You guys know on the ticket, if you don't want to listen on the radio, you can listen to the podcast feed. You download the app. What's the name of the app again?
Sports Day Talk. It's through the Dallas Morning News.
Okay. Sports Day Talk. Download, listen to a segment, Hang Zones, 12 to 3, right? Or 12 to 4?
12 to 3.
12 to 3. Let's go. Talking Mavs, Cowboys. Exciting time for the Cowboys. Is Micah Parsons like the Luka equivalent right now?
Dude, I mean, as far as like people saying, I don't know that I've ever seen anything like this before. I don't know, like from football is obviously much more team game where one guy can't just straight up take over. But as much as we said, I don't know if we've ever seen anything like Luka. I don't know that there's ever been a player like Parsons, like ever. And
That's
that,
exciting.
I mean, he might be the first rookie to win Defensive Player of the Year since Lawrence Taylor, and he was not a pass rusher in college, in which he did not play football last year. It's pretty weird.
That's ridiculous. All right, we'll go listen to Jake. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate your time, and let's get you on again. Talk Mavs, and whenever they're hopefully making a big splash or a playoff run or something.
Very happy to finally be here, so have me back whenever you want.
All right, I'll see you, Jake.
See ya.